Hi there, very warm welcome to Brixton Buddhist Community's Monday night meditation. Especially warm welcome if it's your first time tuning in. So my name is Viryanaga, so I'm an ordained Buddhist in the Viryanaga Buddhist order and also a regular teacher at the Brixton Buddhist Community. So so what we'll be doing in tonight's live stream is we'll be talking about one of the hindrances of ill will and irritation. Maybe that one's familiar to you. And we'll also be talking about the antidotes and how to work with that both on and off the cushion. And so because we've got a live stream, we've got an opportunity for you to also to ask questions. So what's going to happen tonight is I'll lead us in a couple of short meditations and I'll give a talk on this theme. And if you've got any questions about any of the stuff I'm talking about tonight, or anything that's going on in your meditation practice that maybe you want a pointer or two on, then you can just drop them into the chat room on our YouTube page, and we'll get back to you. Well, we'll be able to answer them at the end of the stream. And after this stream, there will be a discussion on Zoom, so you can also just tune in for that. We'll give you the link. The link will be in the description, but also we'll give that to you at the end in the chat room as well. So we'll start just by doing a short meditation, just to kind of ground ourselves, a short lead meditation. So if you get yourself set up, we'll just be sitting for about 10 minutes or so. So you don't need to sit on the floor, but you can if you want to. You can also just get yourself into a chair, comfortable chair, or sit upright on a more upright chair. So yeah, just get whatever you need to do that. And so I'll lead us in a short breathing space meditation, a 3-part breathing space meditation, and then I'll go on and talk a bit more about tonight's theme, and then we'll do a meditation after that. Okay, so if you get whatever you need to meditate, and it's going to be very simple, very simple, but I'll lead us right the way through. So just, if you feel comfortable, you can just close your eyes. And what we're going to do first of all is just particularly notice with the floor, the chair, the cushions. Notice our weight pressing down into the floor or chair or cushions. And this is just helping us start to move away from our thoughts, the thought narrative, the narrative of thoughts that we have going on. And it's just helping us get in touch with the sensations in the body. And that just has the effect of grounding us, helping us start to feel a bit more settled, and hopefully, and not so much at the mercy of thoughts that are arising in our minds. So seeing if you can notice those sensations first of all. And you might just want to try and investigate them a little, bring a bit more curiosity to them. So I can particularly feel the sensations of weight, the sensation feels more alive, feels more substantial than it did just a moment ago. So maybe just tuning into what's going on for you. And in this 3-part meditation, we'll be working first of all with the body, then we'll move on to the breath, and then we'll move into a broader experience. So we're just going to spend a little bit of time on the body, first of all. So you've got your attention low down in the body. And it's good to imagine this as a broad, stable base. So whether you're sitting on a chair or sitting on the floor, you should have 3 points of contact. Both your bottom and your knees or your feet. So that's your broad base, and rising up from that is your spine. So just seeing if you can get a sense of the uprightness of your spine. And in the top of your spine you have your shoulders, and your spine goes up to your neck and your head. So a sense of the spine holding up the upper part of the body. You can feel your shoulders hanging off, your arms hanging off your shoulders, getting a sense of the weight of the arms. Spending a moment on the hands, as well. And then also feeling the head balanced on the top of the spine. And while you're here, it's very good just to check the face is soft and relaxed, the muscles around your eyes, the jaw. And if you notice tension there, just imagining that relaxing. Okay, so now with this broad sense of the body, we can allow our attention or concentration to focus slightly more, and we can just allow it to come to rest on the breath. So you can just attend to whatever area of the breath or the body that you can feel the breath most strongly. So this could be in your chest with your diaphragm, this could be your neck, perhaps even your lips or throat. So you don't want to move your attention around, you just want to keep it stable. And just notice the rise and fall of the breath. And just see if you can stay with those sensations. That might be a fairly pleasant flow for you, easy and relaxed. Or if you're unwell, it might feel a bit more rugged or uncomfortable. Both of those are okay, that's totally fine. We're not trying to push anything away, we're just trying to attend to what sensations are there for us. So I'm just going to give you 30 seconds or so to just stay with the breath. If your mind wanders, just bring it back. So again, just checking in how the breath feels for you, whether it's pleasant or unpleasant or fairly neutral. Perhaps seeing if that's changed at all since you started attending to the breath. And now after that period of narrowing the concentration, we're going to allow it to broaden right out, so to encompass not only the breath and the body, but your whole environment, the room that you're in, sounds you can hear in the outside or in the room or in your house. Perhaps an awareness of other people in the room with you, if you're meditating with others. And just trying to get a sense of them. So both noticing what's coming in terms of your senses, but also you can use your imagination as an additional sense, imagining these other people, perhaps other people in your house, your neighbours, perhaps people in your area, your neighbourhood, people in your city or town, wherever you are, people in your country. And you don't need to have a good idea, you just need to have a broad awareness. You're just bringing these people to mind in a very general way. Just trying to open up your experience with an element of receptivity. And then you can just start to let that go, start to let go of that image, that imaginative ideal, just let it relax. Come back into yourself, take a deeper breath or two, and when you're ready, you can just open your eyes. So we can just use those short meditations just to ground ourselves, and they're great for any time of the day, whatever you're doing, whether you're at home or whether you're a key worker that still needs to go out and work. So they're really, really good to do. So hopefully you feel a bit different now, you feel a bit more settled and here. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to spend a bit of time talking to you about the theme for tonight, and the aim for tonight is to hopefully give you a few ideas about things which are useful to you, relevant ideas that you can use in your meditation during the course of the week, if you want to, but also give you, we'll do a led meditation towards the end of the live stream, so this will give you a bit more time to get into that experience, and also hopefully give you a few more tips and tricks to use again in your home practice, or you can give them a go whenever you like. Okay, so what we have been doing is we've started a 5-week theme on the hindrances in meditation, and this is a very traditional list of negative mental states which get in the way of us having a deeper experience or a higher kind of conscious level of awareness in a way. So they're quite simple, they're quite day-to-day, but you'll probably all be familiar with them. So they're things like sense desire, ill will and irritation, which we're talking about tonight, restlessness and anxiety, which we talked about last week, laziness or sloth, tiredness, and doubt. So you're probably more or less all familiar with those in your own experience. And there's also a list of traditional antidotes as well, which go with them. So we'll really be exploring those over the coming weeks. The antidotes work on all the hindrances to some degree, but for the sake of this series I've paired them up in terms of ones which I personally find most helpful to apply to particular hindrances. And the reason why these hindrances are a problem is that it's so easy for us to get stuck in them, to get into a habit or pattern around them, and they have the effect of either draining all the energy out of us or just scattering our energy. So it means that actually when we sit down to meditate, our mind is just full of stuff going on, or our energy is too low, and we just can't bring ourselves to concentrate on the object of the meditation, whether that's the breath or the body or other people or whatever meditation you happen to be doing. So this week I particularly want to talk about working against ill will and hatred. This is a traditional kind of like phrase, if you like, or terminology for it, ill will and hatred. It's considered one of the root kind of poisons in Buddhism. So 3 of the poisons cause all sorts of suffering in the world. But of course it's a catch-all, okay? They both sound quite severe, but actually this is a catch-all for all sorts of relatively minor negative mental states like frustration, irritation, resentment, dislike, distrust, anger, all those sorts of things. So there's a whole, if you like, this whole sliding scale of sort of ill will and frustrations, irritations, etc. So these are very common in our experience. Well, I speak for myself, very common in my experience, and they're also quite easy to miss. It's very easy for us just to get into a habit of being a little bit irritated with somebody, and we just don't really notice it. It just becomes the kind of water we swim in, and you don't really want to be swimming in water that's full of irritation, mistrust and resentment. And I don't know about you, but at the moment, we're all living together. We're living together 24/7 because of the COVID-19 illness. So we're all, if you're joining me from the UK is in lockdown, as it probably is with you as well. So we're living with people 24/7. Most of us are anyway, unless you live alone. That's got its own problems, of course. So there's lots of opportunity here in shared houses for irritation, frustration, and so on to build up. I mean, it's always, the classic one is always around the washing up, isn't it? people not washing up bits and pieces or not doing things, whether you're in a shared house or whether you're living in a family, etc. There's all sorts of little things. I mean, for me personally, my sort of community bad habit would be never taking my laundry out of the washing machine. I put a wash on and I press go and I forget all about it until someone reminds me several hours later. So my housemates are very good. They've never pulled me up on that so far, but I'm sure there's a little element of irritation for them there. So so whatever your living situation, you probably notice that there's more possibility for these sorts of particularly petty, small irritations and frustrations to be building up at the moment. You've probably got several examples. Maybe you've even got current examples today in a way. You take away the sort of ability to go out for long walks or head out or do whatever it is that you do for fun, or reduce those options, and we soon notice that we boil up. So it definitely feels a bit more challenge around at the moment. I'm going to say a bit more about that in a moment, and also a bit about living alone as well. But generally, the point I'm trying to make is there definitely seems to be a rich ground for these sorts of negative mental states at the moment. But there's also a real opportunity as well. So for myself, for instance, I've definitely noticed increased tensions or increased frustrations arising. So if you're sort of tuned in, if you're aware, you can just use these to your advantage and start to spot these things a bit more easily. And if we really look at what these are, if we look at these sort of petty frustrations or irritations or whatever it is, often if you look close enough, what you'll find is that usually they basically come down to us not getting quite what we want. So usually there's some element of us wanting somebody to do something for us, and they either don't do it or they do something different, or that we have a certain preference. Preference for a certain type of cereal, but the shop doesn't have any. A certain preference for the time we go to bed, but our housemate doesn't want to, or our partner doesn't want to, or whatever. We have a preference and it's not quite met, so that can lead to irritation and ill will. And also the example where actually you want a certain outcome, and it just, even though you do everything that you can, it just doesn't work out for whatever reason. So that can be another instance where we can feel a little bit upset or even angry, even more than a little sometimes. So this is basically what it comes down to, is a kind of disconnect between reality, so a disconnect between how things are actually playing out, or how things have played out, and what our expectations were. And in that gap between our expectations and reality, there's an opportunity for, us to suffer, in this case, create a sort of, an unhappiness, an anger or a frustration, or an ill will towards another person. And of course, you may be in a situation where you live on your own, there's nobody immediately around you. But the other thing, of course, we all do, and we probably all do to quite some degree, is we can direct all that ill will inwards. We can direct it towards us. And that can either be direct, that could be getting frustrated with yourself for not meditating enough, or watching too much Netflix, or not eating well, or whatever it is, not doing this thing that you want to be doing. Or it can actually also be displaced from others. So it can be that we're angry at another person, but actually we can't express that, we can't show it for whatever reason, and that we can turn that inwards towards ourselves and end up getting frustrated at ourselves as well. So I guess we can all do that, but I think it's particularly at risk if you're living on your own at the moment and you don't have other people around to bounce off of. Just for me, when I was learning to meditate for the first time, I used to go to the London Buddhist Centre up in East London. That's where I learned to meditate. I became very aware that I had a very strong inner critic. My voice was very critical, and this particularly aware of this is that when I started meditating more. And it took me quite some time to kind of, I guess a lot of the critic was about how I couldn't meditate or how I wasn't any good at this. But of course, I kept on meditating, and at some point I had to admit that I was okay at meditation, and that actually I wasn't as critical, the criticism was not as founded as it needed to be. So you can, so you don't necessarily need to experience ill will or frustration. It doesn't necessarily need to be directed towards another. It can also be directed towards yourself. So do watch out for both of those instances. And I'm sure you've probably got plenty of examples that you can notice in your own life or even in your own day to day. Okay, so how do we work against these? So, as I said, you could use quite a few of the different antidotes that we'll be going through in these subsequent weeks and apply it to this hindrance of ill will. But I think the most obvious one and the one that I find most useful is called cultivating the opposite. And this it's quite obvious, isn't it? Quite straightforward. So basically, it's very hard to feel angry at somebody if you're also cultivating a kind of sense of kindness, a sense of generosity, a sense of appreciation, even a sense of love. So what we're doing is we're going to basically a good way of working against these negative mental states is to cultivate that sense of the opposite, and it will sort of bend the bamboo back the other way, as the metaphor goes. And there's a word for this, this kindness, generosity, appreciation and love in Buddhism. It's a Pali word, and the word is metta. So metta is actually quite a good word, because the English word love doesn't really, well, it's very broad, it's not very specific, whereas the word metta, it captures a form of love or a form of care, which is less clingy, less attached. It's very free-flowing, it's non-exclusive. You can distribute metta to as many people as you like without others getting jealous or so on. So we're trying to cultivate that sense, that's kind of non-attached love, kind of kindness, generosity and so on. And how we work, if we've got very strong habits in terms of getting irritated or frustrated or whatever it is, feeling angry or critical, what we need to do is we need to retrain our minds, and it basically means reworking our habits, which takes a bit of effort, but it's worth doing. It's why we talk about sort of meditation practice in a way. It's something that has to be repeated. And if you are a sort of practicing Buddhist, you might think, oh well, this is just metta. I know this already. Don't need to worry about that. I've got that sorted. I practice the metta bhavana meditation every other day. But it's just like going to the gym in a way. It's no good knowing that the gym is going to make you fit. You've actually got to get up and go. So just like that, meditation is much the same. It's all good to know that, or the metta bhavana practice. It's all good to know that feeling metta, feeling generosity, feeling kindness works against ill will. But you've also got to practice it as well. So you could, even if you know this metta bhavana practice, or you're familiar with the concept of metta and working with the opposite, you could ask yourself, how effective is your metta practice at the moment? Does it work against any sense of ill will or anger or frustration in your experience? And I strongly suspect that we could all do a bit more. Particularly at the moment. I mean, just the whole environment at the moment does seem to be one of increased tension and increased anxiety and so on. And so there's a lot to be working with, isn't there? A lot to be working with. A friend of mine went out to get some supplies from the shop for us. So we've been unwell here, but he's better. So he went out and got some food for us, and he reported that the supermarkets are very uncomfortable places at the moment, and that he witnessed a kind of outburst in the supermarkets. Everyone was lining up, and there was an altercation between two people in the queue, and the poor checkout attendant had to get involved. So it seems like there's definitely a kind of sense of that around at the moment in the environment. I hope maybe you agree with that. And also I think there's a more insidious kind of view potentially, because we've been told to socially isolate, if I got it right there, socially distance, that's what I'm looking for. Because we're being asked to socially distance, I think there can be this slight insidious view that creeps in that people need to be avoided, that we need to that people even slightly are dangerous, that there's some risk associated with associating with other people. And of course that is true in a physical sense, like we definitely want to be looking after ourselves and remaining socially distant from one another. But what we're talking about really is physical distance, aren't we? So social distance, I think, is a bit of a misnomer, which another one of my friends pointed out. What we're trying to do is cultivate physical distance, but we actually can be emotionally close. with people, if you see what I mean. We can still be warm, we can still be friendly. So so just watch out for that. Watch out for a sense of trying to avoid people, or that people are dangerous. Have a look, have a see if that's in your experience. And of course, do maintain social distance, or at least physical distancing, but do try to remain warm. And I'd say that even if you're a regular practitioner, a regular Buddhist practitioner, this can still creep up on you. So in our community, for instance, we definitely had, when people were getting unwell, there was definitely some increased tensions, and then we did have an evening where there was a little bit of conflict. What was really heartening to see was that I came down in the morning to find the two people involved having a really close discussion, a real heart-to-heart around what had gone on between them, and it was very, very quickly resolved. But so even practitioners with a number of years' experience, it can still creep up on you. This tendency towards ill will or irritation, frustration, etc. So do just watch out for that. So yes, there's much to work against. And so what I'll teach you in a moment is a meditation. We'll do a variant of the Metta Bhavana meditation, which I'll lead through for those of you who've never done this before. Metta, or cultivating the opposite, is also a really active practice. It's not just one that involves our thoughts and our intentions on the meditation cushion. It's also very much about actually doing things, actually acting, being engaged. And this can, part of our sort of training, part of our going to the gym, if you like, our gym for cultivating positivity, can be all sorts of good acts, all sorts of positive actions. So some of I'll just give you a rundown of some good ones. There's probably lots more as well, but one of them can be really appreciating other people, and you could even rejoice in them. You could send people a card, or if you're talking to them on the phone, you could appreciate their good qualities. You could rejoice in them. You can also reflect on what you're grateful for. You can a really good way of doing this is to write down 3 things or 5 things at the end of the day, some of the things you're grateful for, or you can also just reflect on that. There's of course generosity, acting in a generous way, and this can be giving of yourself, giving of your time, giving of objects or food or whatever. But it can also there can also be a generosity in not taking. So particularly not taking more than you need, or more than your fair share in a way. So there can be a generous act in not taking. I'm particularly thinking about the relevance to kind of stockpiling. And I think in the supermarkets people do have a sense of justice, don't they? And they do get a bit irritated with people that are taking a bit more than their fair share. And a number of my Buddhist friends have said they've had to, they go into supermarkets and find the shelves kind of empty. I think the supermarket's catching up now a bit, but certainly in the last few weeks, some of the shelves have been empty, and they've really had to work against that tendency to also want to get a bit extra in and make sure they're okay, make sure they're safe. So I think that is actually also a generous act. So just taking what you currently need and leaving the rest for other people that might need it more. And there's also a very interesting one here which I like to talk about sometimes, which is not taking people's time unless it's offered. So there's quite a bit of anxiety around at the moment, and it's very easy to just sort of emotionally dump on people around us, isn't it? We're having a difficult time or a bad day or something, and we just want to share that with people. But it's good just to check in if others are able to receive that, and if they're able to. So they'll also probably be feeling the pressures and the tensions. So it's always good just to check. And so there's a generous act in either being there and taking that on for other people, or actually not doing the same to them, not kind of taking up their time or emotional energy if they're not in a state to receive it. So good just to think about that a little bit. And then finally, I just want to say about other general actions. I mean, I think if we can't fly so much at the moment, but quite a few people were reducing their flying for the sake of the environment, and a number of people I know, particularly Buddhist practitioners, tend to have a vegan or vegetarian diet, in part I think to minimise the impact on the environment. There's other of course reasons as well, but I think that is one advantage, and that for me does feel like there's also a sense of generosity in that as well, trying to again walk lightly, to be light on our resources. So you may or may not agree with all of those, or may not get a feel for all of those, but I just wanted to give you some kind of examples of active steps that you can do day to day, because I think cultivating the opposite, in order to develop a habit, in order to make it a practice, we need to just sort of be working at it little by little. So it's great to work on it on the meditation cushion, but it's also really good to watch out for these opportunities to help or be generous or appreciate people just as we go about our day. And just little by little, that's how we start to shift our the habits and patterns of our mind. And you might find, particularly if you're starting this sort of practice, that you might find that you notice a lot of missed opportunities, that you say, oh, I wish I really did that. I wish I'd given that. I'd wish I'd done that. I'd wish I'd offered that for a friend. And that's fine. Don't worry about that. If you notice, that's really good that you've noticed. And you could just set an intention to make sure you don't miss the second opportunity when you get another chance to do it again. And what you'll find is that as you go through, your sensitivity to when you can help or when you can give will increase, and you'll be able to be more responsive. So particularly a practice you might like to take up is one which I particularly like, particularly for living with others. I call it I don't know where I've read it but somewhere, but it really stuck with me, but I call it the Bodhisattva's double standard, or the positive double standard. So this a double standard is usually considered a bad thing, but in this example, this is where you'd expect a lot from yourself in terms of giving or generosity, but you're very forgiving of others' limitations. And accommodating. So another way of putting it might be doing a bit more than your fair share. And if certainly in the sort of community which I live in, where we're all kind of helping each other out, or try to aspire to help each other out as much as possible, doing a bit more than your fair share can really just help everything go along smoothly. So I might get a question or two about that, about I don't always want to be doing somebody's washing up or whatever, but if you've got some questions, do drop them in the chat room. Okay, so I hope I've given you a few ideas here. So we'll do a meditation in a moment, and I'll lead us through that, how we can work on the cushion with these mental states, but also giving you a few examples of things you can do off the cushion. One thing I would say is that this, of pretty much all Buddhist practices, this is probably one of the most fundamental and transformative. So we teach the Metta Bhavana meditation early on to people that just come along to our meditation classes. And we don't do that because it's a simple practice. It's actually quite a challenging practice at times, but we teach it because it's most transformative and most effective. So if you sort of consistently make effort and you consistently apply your energy, even over quite a short amount of time, 3 or 4 days or a week, you might really notice that it transforms how you are. It transforms your mental states, it can transform your living situation, and it can transform your friendships and relationships. So you don't need to take my word for it. You might just want to give it a go, stepping up your game a little bit, wherever it is in terms of your kindness practice, your generosity practice, and just seeing if you can push it a little bit further for this week. Okay, so what I'm going to suggest now is that we get set up for meditation. So just to remind you, if you've got any questions about anything I've said, you can put them in the chat room, and we'll get through to those. We'll look at some of those towards the end of after the meditation. But get them in now so they're available. And so you might just want to set yourself up again for meditation. And if you want to just go get yourself an extra cushion or blanket or whatever, then do feel free to go and get that. And what we'll be doing in this meditation is we'll be doing a variation of the Metta Bhavana practice. So for those of you that know it, we'll be going through that, but I'm going to lead it through with some added elements to it to give you a bit of material to do it. To go to maybe a bit more creative energy in your own practice. If you've never done the Metta Bhavana practice, don't worry, you can still follow along with me. I'm going to lead us right the way through. But just to let you know that what happens in this practice is that we bring people to mind. So the different kind of classes of people that we're going to bring to mind. First one is that we'll bring to mind ourselves. Then we'll bring to mind somebody who's a friend. Then we bring to mind somebody who we don't know all that well. And then we bring to mind somebody we're having difficulty with, or tradition it's called the enemy. So these are the 4 people to bring to mind. So you don't need to worry quite who you bring to mind. You can pick anybody, but I would recommend that you pick somebody you actually know. Like for the neutral person, for instance, or the person you don't know well, pick somebody like a colleague or somebody who shares your block of flats or whatever it is, somebody but somebody who you don't really know all that well. Okay, so if you're ready to go, what we'll do is we'll just settle into our meditation postures again. And again, it's fine if you're sitting in a chair. Just make sure you're sitting upright and that you're comfortable. You might want something to rest your hands on. And then when you're ready, you can just close your eyes. Okay, and in this meditation, we're going to mainly use the body as an anchor. So we're going to get a sense of the sensations of the body, just like we did in the first meditation. And throughout the practice, we're just going to try to keep our awareness grounded in the body. So getting a sense of the feel of the body, maybe the contact with the ground. Reconnecting with your sense of your spine being upright, your shoulders and neck being positioned at the top of your spine, your head being balanced, a whole sense of the body. And then I'm going to ask you to imagine these people one by one. And when we do that, what you're looking for, trying to tune in for, is kind of an awareness of your emotional response. So you might be familiar with that sense of seeing a friend, you're meeting a friend, you walk around the corner and you see a friend, and you get an immediate emotional response, don't you? You get an immediate kind of openness arise. So we're just trying to tune in to any emotional response that we're feeling to these people that we're bringing to mind, whether that's a positive one or whether that's a more negative, closed and tight kind of feeling. Okay, so the Metta Bhavana practice. And they're going to be quite short stages, but I'll talk us through. Okay, so in this first stage, we're just bringing ourselves to mind. And we don't need an idea of ourselves, we've just been bringing our bodies to mind, so we don't need to do anything else. We've got a sense of ourselves, we can just stay with that. And what is your immediate emotional response to yourself? Again, it might be positive, you might feel well, you might feel happy, but you may also feel a bit critical of yourself or frustrated. Both of those are okay. We're just noticing at the moment, we're not judging. And can you bring to mind some qualities about yourself that you appreciate? Perhaps just one quality that you appreciate about yourself. And you can just imagine that. Maybe you don't need to imagine it, maybe it's clear to you. And then you could imagine, or you can remember, when others have appreciated you for that quality, or even another quality. So see if you can bring to mind an imaginative sense or a real sense of you being appreciated. And is there something that you're grateful to yourself for? So you don't need to worry, just if something comes to mind you can just go with that. But if you can't think of anything, that's okay, but just seeing if There's a sense of gratitude for yourself, for a past self that did something, or a part of yourself that you're grateful for. Okay, and then just checking in with your emotional response. So how is that emotion? Has that emotional response shifted at all? Is it a positive emotional response, or do you still feel negative or closed down? So that's all we need to do in this practice. This is a variation of the metta practice, but we're just seeing what our emotional response is when we bring things to mind, bring people and qualities to mind. Okay. And then we can move on to bringing a friend to mind. So bring to mind somebody that you know well. And first of all, again, seeing what your immediate response is when you imagine this person or bring them to mind. So hopefully one of openness, of happiness. But it's okay if it doesn't feel very strong, or it's fairly neutral, that's fine too. And can you imagine a quality of theirs? So bring to mind a quality that you appreciate. And then what about an idea of people appreciating them? So you could think about their other friends, think about their parents, their siblings if they have them, just appreciating them for who they are or for their qualities. And are you grateful to them for anything? Is there something that they've done for you maybe, or for others, that you're grateful for? And so what's your emotional response now? So compared to when you brought your friend to mind, has it lifted? Is it about the same? You're just noticing that, recognising what you're feeling, if anything. And in this way, we're just helping to create a positive habit, positive feeling. And perhaps with the friend, maybe you could just notice if there's a kind of positive intention arising. So when you see your friend next, or when you speak to them on the phone, is there an intention towards a certain feeling or a certain action arising in you? Okay, now we can just let the friend go for a moment. And then we can, in the third stage, we can bring to mind somebody that we don't know well, traditionally called the neutral person. So it might be a bit harder to imagine this person, but bringing them to mind the best you can. You might like to imagine the context that you know them from. And what is your immediate emotional response to them? So likely it's a fairly neutral one, but you can just bring some curiosity to that. You might notice that there's a slight tendency towards a positive feeling or a slight tendency towards a negative feeling. Both of those are okay. Just being aware. And can you bring to mind a positive quality that they have? It might be, you might not know all that much, it might be very little, but maybe there's something about them that you kind of like, or that you recognise in them. They're helpful, they're kind, or they're friendly. Even that they dress well or whatever. Just a small quality that you appreciate. And then you can be more imaginative as well, so you can bring to mind perhaps the fact that even though you don't know much about their life, they've probably got plenty of friends, family, and so on that do appreciate them as well. So you don't need to know the details, but you can just imagine their friends appreciating this person. So just seeing if you can imagine that. Is there anything about this person that you're grateful for? Have they done anything for you? Have they helped you at all? Is it the fact that they just work in the local corner shop and that they're there when you need them? Or they're the postman and they deliver your mail? Is there something about this person that you feel grateful for? It's okay if you don't have anything, but just seeing if you can get in touch with that. Okay, and what is your emotional response now? What is your emotional response to this person as you're bringing them to mind? What does that feel in the body? So does it feel a little bit warmer than when you first brought them to mind? And is there any sense of an intention towards them? So maybe if you see them again, maybe you'll be a bit friendlier. Maybe you feel a bit warmer. Maybe you think even just thinking about them a bit more. Just seeing if there's any sense of a positive intention that you're going to kind of carry forward after the meditation. And then we can let this person go. And then we can bring to mind a person that we're having difficulties with. So I'd recommend picking somebody who you have just a small difficulty with, not an arch enemy, not at this stage, but just seeing if you can bring them to mind. And firstly noticing that immediate emotional response. So you might notice a closing down, a tightness, a narrowness. It's very important that we feel that first of all. We mustn't ignore that. We must just acknowledge where the start point is, where we are beginning with this person as we bring them to mind. And can you try to imagine a positive quality about them? Again, there might be things that you dislike about them, but is there something in their qualities that you do appreciate? Is there something there that you can at least not dislike? Can you broaden them out as a person beyond whatever it is that you're upset with them about? And what about their friends or their family? What do they see in them? Is there a sense of what they appreciate about this person? How about a sense of gratitude? So, are you able to cultivate any sense of gratitude? Has this person done anything for you, either in the past or in the present, that you've valued and you feel grateful for? That may be too difficult, that may be stretched too far, but just seeing if you can get in touch with that in any way. is your emotional response now towards this person? So it's probably not going to turn about just in a couple of minutes, but you're just looking for any subtle sense of shift, any subtle sense of a slightly more positive intention towards this person. Maybe you slightly broaden out your perspective of them. Maybe you can see that they're a bit more human beyond this single issue. Maybe you can actually imagine their whole life, and that you can see that there's more beyond this particular issue or element of your relationship. Okay, and then we can just, for the moment, just put them to one side. And then in the last stage of the practice, we begin this stage by bringing to mind all four people that we've just imagined. So ourselves, the good friend, the neutral person, and the difficult person. And just seeing if you can kind of get a sense of equality amongst them. So you could just use reflections like the fact that you're all human. You've all got challenges, difficulties, you all want to be happy. So even if you don't agree with everybody on a certain level, you can just try to connect with that basic humanness. So they're probably also affected by COVID-19, they're probably also housebound at the moment, just like you, just like most of the other people in the world. Just see if you can connect on that level. And then what you can do at this stage is just bring more and more people into that reflection. So you might start to bring in other people that you know, that are around you in your immediate vicinity. We're just trying to connect with that sense of humanness, human nature. And just seeing if you can tap into that sense of appreciation, even a sense of gratitude. So you don't need to necessarily agree with everybody. We can disagree, we can have different views and perspectives. But these people all around you all contribute to this society that we live in. They help it all work, they help it all run. People bring food to us. People stock the shelves, people work in hospitals. It's a whole range of things. And just seeing if you can imaginatively bring more and more people to mind. You don't need to worry about specific people. You can just imaginatively connect with as many people as possible. Just trying to create that sense of kind of positive intention, kind of a goodwill, a goodwill towards other humans, other people struggling with the current conditions, with being locked down, people being sick and unwell, people dying. Just seeing if you can connect with a sense of goodwill towards people, even if you don't agree with certain things on a practical or a basic day-to-day level. And then we can just let that go. We can just let that image, that imaginative vision just go, and we can just come back to our sense of the body, sense of our body, sense of the breath in the body. Just breathing, just sitting. Just being. And when you're ready, you can just start to bring this meditation to a close. So I hope that was useful. So we've got a bit of time now to do questions. But before we do questions, I'm just going to suggest a few things. I mean, you could do a meditation like that if you want, as many times as you like per day. There's plenty online. You can also look it up. It's called the Metta Bhavana practice. So that was a variation. It was a more elaborate variation than the basic practice. But I thought I'd wanted to give you a few extra kind of ideas or ways of working in the practice. So give it a try yourself and see if that makes any difference. And also you can try and put those other things as well. So working against ill will, hatred, frustration, etc. does require physical action. So yeah, kindness, generosity, appreciation, gratitude, etc. All good examples. Okay, so I'm going to go over to Adam and just see if there's any questions waiting in our chat room.
We've just had one question come through from Kirsty. She says, have you ever experienced anyone who perhaps isn't Buddhist feeling a little baffled or agitated with your choice to respond kindly to unkind words or deeds?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, thanks, Kirsty. Thanks for tuning in. I guess there's sometimes that people, there's two responses in a way. So clearly there's some people in the world which are unpleasant people, aren't they? You know, they're challenging people. They may commit atrocities or crimes. They may even actually quite directly harm people. I guess from a Buddhist perspective, we're not trying to forgive that necessarily. We're not trying to say, well, that's okay, I'm still going to love you in a way, however you are. But I guess what we would as Buddhists, particularly, we would want, we live out of an ideal that we want people to grow and we want people to develop. So part of wishing those people well would be wishing that they change, if you see what I mean, wishing, hoping that they grow and develop into being more ethical, more skillful, more responsible people, and people that are causing less harm. Of course, it can, some people are in very difficult situations, and a lot of that harm that they cause is a result of their previous circumstances, in a way, previous consequences of their environments or whatever. So there can also be a kind of, there can be a recognition of that and a kind of, I guess it depends on the level of severity, but a kind of tolerance of that. Yeah, so that's one element. The other thing I wanted to say is it's also being kind to people or being generous to people is also not about being a doormat. For instance, if just take it's a fairly mundane example, but just say you're fed up with your housemate never doing the washing up. Well, if it's bothering you, you could just do the washing up, if you see what I mean. That could be one way of not experiencing ill will. You could just do it. But of course, you also probably then want to speak to your housemate about that. But if you talk to them out of a sense of irritation or ill will, it's going to be quite different than if you talk to them out of a sense of kind of kindness or care or consideration, or just even sharing your experience of that and the effects that action has on you. So you see what I mean? It has quite a different effect, and you'll know that it's very difficult to get anybody to change their mind by approaching them with irritation or ill will. What tends to happen is people just dig in. So I've actually always found that by you can be quite strong, you can be quite firm with people, but you can still approach people with a sense of kindness, and usually that's the most effective way of bringing about change. So I don't quite know. I hope that answered your question in one way or another. But yeah, very, very good question. Yeah, let's just see if there's any others.
One more question from Maria Jose. She says, I'm curious to know, what do you think about resentment? I still find it terribly desolating, as I can see how much poisoned energy it packs.
Yeah, no, welcome. Nice, thanks for tuning in, Maria. Yeah, I think resentment is a tricky one, isn't it? I guess for me, I kind of get a sense of resentment being a kind of slightly festering emotion. It's kind of ill will that's kind of hasn't really gone anywhere, hasn't kind of worked through, and it's kind of festered a bit or gone, or gone, like you say, gone poisonous. So I think it's very difficult to work with, very, very difficult to work with indeed. I think it requires a lot of kindness, both on your own part and also towards the other person in a way. It requires quite a lot of forgiveness. And it's really, there's no easy way of going about it. One just has to keep working. I mean, what you'll probably find is if you've been practicing the metta bhavana sort of consistently, or practicing kindness and generosity practices for some time, you'll find that actually you can build up a kind of wellspring of positive energy, and eventually it starts to erode these more difficult feelings. I mean, to give you a very personal example, I for many years felt very resentful towards my parents, as I'm sure a lot of people have, and it just took me a long time to work with that, and it's bit by bit, it gradually, I became more and more open, and particularly I focused on the areas or the things about them I liked, and not the things about them I didn't like, and that gradually brought me into more connection and more harmony with them, until now I'm reconnected with them and actually appreciate them. I mean, my dad in particular is very, very different worldview to me, and we're never going to agree on some things, but I really do appreciate him now, if you sort of mean. I appreciate him for who he is, and for what he's done for me as well. So yeah, resentment, very tricky to work with, but not impossible. Anything else?
That's all.
Great. Okay, well that's it then for the stream. Thank you for tuning in. So just to say that we're going to have a discussion after this group on Zoom. So you'll find the link in the description box on YouTube or in the chat room. So also on our website. So come along if you want to explore any of the themes that I've discussed in tonight's stream, or you want to talk about your meditation practice perhaps. And I believe that will be broken up into small groups, and that's going to be hosted by Sagara Sila. So do join us for that. And don't forget, if you've enjoyed these streams, don't forget to subscribe and click the alert bell. So it just helps you let to know about all the other stuff we've got coming up. And we've got 2 really excellent events this week. It's a 3-stream week. So we've got today, Monday, we've got Amlavajra talking on karma and rebirth on Wednesday. And on Saturday, we've got a very special guest, Vajratara, joining Amlavajra to have a discussion around what is the value, or what is the purpose of a spiritual community. I think particularly relevant if we think about whether the whole coronavirus thing is going to have a societal shift, and what our role as a spiritual community, what a spiritual community can play in that. So don't miss that. That'll be Saturday at 10:30. So yeah, subscribe, check out our website, make sure you tune in to the next event. And do also, if you can, we're on all of our events, all of these live streams. We're just completely dependent on people's donations and people's generosity. So please do contribute to the stream if you can. So there's a link in the description to help us out with that. Okay, thank you for tuning in. I hope you have a good evening and a good week, and I'll see you next time.